This is not a video essay, this is an audio essay. This is a meta audio-video essay about audio-video essays. This is an audio-video essay about an audio-video ludic essay, which, by the way, I don't agree with. Stay true.
Jaws is such a great movie. Who could forget moments as memorable as these?
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
Sorry, what was that?
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
Hold on, isn't it "we're gonna need a bigger boat"? People say that all the time. It's so iconic that it's become a figure of speech. When someone's in over their heads dealing with a problem, they say, "we're gonna need a bigger boat." You're telling me that's not in the movie? This is a common example of the Mandela effect, where large groups of people misremember something from culture or history in the same way. Now, the discourse around the Mandela effect can get really stupid really fast. People like to talk about how it's so mysterious that we all remember the same wrong information, and point to supernatural explanations. The woman who coined the term still maintains that it's caused by parallel universes leaking into our own. But most examples of the Mandela effect have really obvious common sense explanations. In almost every case, people are just remembering what they expect instead of what was actually there. Like, people assume that Berenstain Bears was spelled with an E because that's how 99% of other names like that are spelled. Most people just never looked that closely and made an assumption that they never questioned. When it comes to misremembered movie quotes, though, there can sometimes be more to it. Sometimes quotes are paraphrased to be more concise, like, "No, I am your father," becoming "Luke, I am your father." Some quotes are changed because the original phrasing was awkward, like Mr. Rogers' "It's a beautiful day in this neighborhood," becoming "the neighborhood." But sometimes, the way people misremember an iconic line can tell us something about how they experienced that piece of media. It gets at an emotional truth, even if the words are wrong. Take the line from Snow White, "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who's the fairest of them all?" In the Disney movie, the line is actually,
"Magic mirror on the wall, who is the fairest one of all?"
Snow White is a fairy tale, full of whimsy and wonder. People who grew up watching this movie remember the fun, colorful story, and that influences their memory of specific details. "Mirror, mirror on the wall" sounds more poetic, whimsical, especially since the original line already rhymed, and it does a much better job of conveying how the movie as a whole makes you feel. Another example is Oliver Twist. The most famous line in the story is, "Please, sir, may I have some more?" But in both the book and the movie, the line is,
"Please, sir, I want some more."
"I want some more" has a harsher edge to it. It's defiant. But "may I have some more" is more deferential and pathetic sounding, with more formal grammar, all of which better fits the cultural image of the poor, starving Victorian child. In Casablanca, Ilsa never says the line, "Play it again, Sam." The real line is just,
"Play it, Sam."
But in the story, Rick is remembering a time long past, when he and Ilsa used to listen to the song, back when they were still together, and everything was better. When we remember that line, it's not the specific words we're remembering, but the feeling of sad nostalgia that it evokes. And that brings us back to Jaws. The reason we remember him saying "we" and not "you" is because this whole back half of the movie is about these men hanging together and taking down this monster, together. We watch them beat the odds and take down the shark while having each other's backs. Even though the boat belongs to Quint, it becomes a safe haven for all of them as the only place out of the water and out of reach of the shark. And to an extent, that all includes the audience. When the characters feel safe, we feel safe. We feel relief when they're on the boat, and our anxiety spikes when they go into the water. So even though Brody never said it, "We're gonna need a bigger boat" is the more thematically appropriate line. It communicates the way the story feels to us in the audience. And that's why it's so, memorable.
This is a shot from Hello Dolly, the 1969 movie based on the Broadway musical. This is that same shot as shown on an iPod screen, like the one that sentient trash collector Wally has in his home. But this is what we see in the actual movie. It's not the same shot. That's right, this specific shot that we see Wally recording is not in the original film. The rest of the scene is intact, except for this. Why? Well, it has something to do with this shot at the end of the film, where Wally regains his memories thanks to his high-tech crush Eve holding his hand. They've just been through a lot. Wally followed Eve to space, where they showed the humans proof of life on Earth, defeating the ship's evil autopilot to bring them back after 700 years away. At the start of the movie, Wally was alone on Earth, except for his cockroach buddy. Watching Hello Dolly gave him a glimpse of what life on Earth used to be like, filtered through the rose-colored lens of a Hollywood musical, of course. So this is how he learns about connection with another being, from the characters Cornelius and Irene singing "It Only Takes a Moment" as they declare their love for one another.
I guess the first question that would come up for this film is why Hello Dolly? There was something about juxtaposing sci-fi and the future with retro old stuff. I just loved that combination. I just couldn't get the idea out of my head of what would these two things feel like together.
What's interesting about the depiction of the past in this film is that all of the humans of the past are shown in live action. It creates a further divide. Wally's not just a different species, he's a different medium. Is love even meant for him? Of course, he longs for love regardless, and as far as he knows, hand-holding is the ultimate way of showing it. That's a direct result of the close-up in his version of the movie. You see, in film, a shot is more than just what you point your camera at. It's also about how you point that camera. A close-up is all about detail. A close-up of a face shows us the range of emotions that the character is feeling. A close-up of an object tells us that this thing is important. So the invented close-up here brings more focus to the hands of the lovers. It also clues us in on what Wally himself is focusing on. What part of the scene sticks out to him? In the original film, the scene ends with the lovers walking into the distance together. By making a cut and adding in this close-up as the final shot, the conclusion of the scene becomes the act of hand-holding. The scene is now about connection. Eve isn't immediately receptive to Wally's advances. After all she knows is her directive, to find proof of life on Earth and bring it to the captain of the Axiom. She didn't have any old movies to teach her about love. It takes Wally almost being blown up for Eve to start to soften, but in the chaos that follows, he stops working. And when he boots up again, all his memories are gone, including those of his favorite movie. He doesn't remember Hello Dolly, he doesn't remember the shot, and he doesn't remember what hand-holding means. It takes Eve reaching out to bring him back.
The thing about machines is that you know you can fix them, but what if they are reset and they lose their memory? What if they lose who they are? Because who they are is no longer really about their outside, it's their inside. And that's the thing that truly can be at risk, and with no promise and understanding of can you get it back. It just sent a chill down my spine to suddenly tap into that and realize that's our ending. So we certainly, of course, like we always do, went back into the film and set up all this stuff so that it would all feel organic and intentional through the whole movie. And by seeing the two lovers hold hands in that song in Hello Dolly, and knowing that that's one of the most intimate displays of affection you can have in public is to hold hands, it's a pretty public expression of how much somebody feels about another person, and I thought that was the best way to show that. So her learning to hold hands and learning what it means and then to suddenly do it back is basically saying, I love you.
So not only did this fake shot from Hello Dolly save Wally in the film, it also altered the course of the film's production, as the filmmakers realized the role it could play in a powerful ending.
Up, up, down, down, left, right, A, B, start. This is the Konami code, a cheat code that former/current/it's complicated video game developer Konami put in all of their classic arcade games. First implemented in the popular side-scrolling shooter Contra, this code is so well known that other games that aren't even developed by Konami, use this code as their own. Like, okay, did you know that in the original Tomb Raider you could use it to make Lara Croft explode? pretty cool. Not just limited to the games of old, the Konami code is still being used to this day. The Outer Wilds, a mind-bending spacefaring romp, holds one final secret that was discovered only last year. All you need to do is go to Attlerock, find this can of expired marshmallows, then toast them over the fire. Enter the Konami code and nothing will happen. Not quite yet anyway. You may need to take a look towards the stars. A quick trip into the moon's orbit will reveal a rather large but featureless sphere. Well, save for the neon purple face on the back. Nobody is really sure why this is here or why you have to follow such a specific set of instructions to see it. There are many theories online on the Reddits and the polygons of the internet as to what this actually means. Maybe it's some kind of hint towards a future game, or perhaps it's just a secret from a board member of the development team. Still, it's nice to know that years after release, these games still find ways to surprise us.
When I was a kid, I was terrified of being the only one on any given floor of my house. Just the idea was enough to send shivers down my spine. What really scared me wasn't being alone, rather it was because despite knowing that I was, I didn't feel alone. I could feel eyes on my back, see silhouettes in the shadows, hear murmurs in the other rooms. Most threatening of all, I knew myself an intruder, so I bargained. Over and over, I begged to be forgiven, to be spared. I promised to not spend long in the empty hallways and rooms. The house would only ever answer with merciless silence.
Did it not occur to you that as an organism existing within a greater organism, your intrusion would be felt?
Did you know that Coraline likely has arachnophobia? The book by Neil Gaiman says they made Coraline intensely uncomfortable. It's never brought up again. In fact, despite the plethora of references to spiders, from their webs to their egg sac and the color of their abdomen, a real spider is only present exactly twice in the story. One crawls over her hand in the dark, but the only other, more fascinating encounter goes like this. Then, she walked through an empty bathroom containing only a cast iron bath, and in the bath, a dead spider the size of a small cat. It is, just as Coraline's fear of spiders, never brought up again. Due to many more moments like these, the book is generally considered a much more disturbing version of like a stop-motion masterpiece, and what I found within its pages painted a much more interesting portrait of the strange house Coraline almost gets devoured in.
And now, like the wayward spider who witlessly settles upon a sweeper's tongue, you will be swallowed.
If you have never read House of Leaves for yourself, you might be surprised to learn that the Davidson's house, with its unforgettable 5.5-minute hallway, its enormous spiral staircase, and its great echoing growls, constitutes only really half of the narrative. In the footnotes of the mind-bending Davidson's record are the equally spine-chilling accounts of Johnny Truant, the man who found and published the manuscript. As he works on piecing together the dead man's ramblings into a coherent story, he starts experiencing strange and sudden extreme panic attacks during which he is certain a great unseen beast will mutilate him. He goes on for hundreds of words describing the paralyzing fear its deafening roar strikes in him. A roar not unlike that of the house.
If we were to dissect the house, we would find organs and stomachs, brains and thighs and eyes, dreams and memories and a mouth that will bite down.
After a few months, Johnny's situations worsen so much that people start assuming he's on drugs when they see him. Alas, drugs are not what's killing Johnny from the inside. It is a deep, uncontrollable, uncompromising, unshakable fear. Of all the aspects of Johnny's story, this is the one I relate to the most. I have pretty severe arachnophobia. Seeing a spider is all that's required to trigger it. If I'm not expecting it, a really bad attack can occasionally happen. I won't be able to stay still. Thousands of little legs will crawl all over my body, my clothes, my belongings. Continually shaking them off until I calm down or move far away enough is the only thing I can do. Sometimes I cry. The thing with a phobia of living things, very common living things, is that you are never really free of it. Just as the Davidsons have to contend with their house possibly betraying them, so do I have to consider that my house is simply a giant web I can't run from. Behind every corner, under every object, in every little shadow, a spider waits patiently for me to find it. In a way, I envy Coraline. The impossible pitch-black corridor leading to the other house is implied to have been found by the beldam, not made. As such, Coraline can effectively kick the spider out of her house and lock it away in whatever strange beast has made its home in the wall of the drawing room.
While a house may hunger, it cannot starve. And so, in fever and anger and loneliness, it may simply lie in wait. Doors open, shades drawn, hallways empty, hungry.
The beldam in the corridor, the house on Ash Tree Lane, the war in Johnny's head, and the hunger of an Adamy's house, they're all imagined. I can look up from my book or away from my screen and sigh in relief. But my beast is much too real. It might not eat me, it might not crush me, it might not cut me open, but one day, soon approaching as the exceptionally warm winter gives way to an exceptionally early spring, I will look up from a book or away from a screen and it will be there. All 8 legs and all 8 eyes. For probably as long as I live, I have to remind myself that every step I take is one step closer to my next encounter with my greatest fear, lest the beast may take me away for good into dark recesses of my mind, where it has weaved itself a house.
Bienvenue chez toi, maman.
Oh, joyeux anniversaire, Im.
Merci, maman.
Comme tu as grandi. Tu seras encore en forme à 80 ans. Non. La vie ne me réserve plus aucune seconde.
Et attends. Aïe. Oh.
Amy.
Le film que vous tournez en ce moment, Souvenir de ma mère.
Ce ne sera pas un grand film.
In 1934, a 16-year-old actress was cast as a lead in RKO Pictures' production of Anne of Green Gables. Soon after, she took on the fictional lead character's name as her own, undergoing a legal name change that remained for the rest of her life. Dawn O'Day became Anne Shirley.
So if you'll only call me Anne with an E, I'll try and reconcile myself to it. Very well.
This video will explore how the 1930s Hollywood publicity machine blurred the lines between Anne Shirley the beloved character and Anne Shirley the star, and how it all comes back to a murder mystery that occurred 12 years before. The Anne of Green Gables story has been adapted many times since the original book was published in 1908. Each time, the actress has become known for playing Anne, the wholesome 11-year-old orphan, but sometimes this association can be damaging to a young actress trying to establish her career. Anne of Green Gables was first adapted in 1919 by William Desmond Taylor, with Mary Miles Minter in the lead role. Just 3 years later, Taylor was found dead in his home in a gruesome scandal that rocked Hollywood. To this day, the case remains unsolved. The investigation uncovered love letters from Minter that led the press to allege an affair between them, with a 30-year age gap. This connection made her a suspect in the murder. She was never arrested, but Minter's public image was ruined by the scandal. The studio destroyed all known copies of the film because of their conviction that consumers would no longer find Minter believable as Anne of Green Gables. When it came time to adapt Anne of Green Gables again in 1934, studio executives knew they couldn't risk another scandal like that. Anne was so beloved by audiences that people thought whoever played her should fully embody her, which meant she should be totally innocent and childlike. So, RKO Pictures picked a young starlet and turned her into the fictional character. The studio wanted to convince audiences that she was so perfect for Anne that she took on her name, except it wasn't just her stage name that became Anne Shirley, it was her legal name. Her mother's legal name even became Mimi Shirley. Retellings of the story say it this way. Dawn O'Day changed her own name to Anne Shirley because of how much she related to the character.
What would you think if I gave it a new name? Something that would sound more euphonious.
But I think it's important to note that, according to Anne herself, it was the studio that changed her name. In the 1930s, Hollywood contracts treated stars' names and faces as studio property. An established star with a recognizable name could be a threat to studios. Some of the most famous stars of early Hollywood used their name power to negotiate salary raises and better contracts. As a young actress with only small credits, Dawn O'Day didn't have that ability. By taking away her name and replacing with a character, RKO tied her to that role forever, inhibiting Anne Shirley's name power. Stars were discouraged from hiring their own publicity team, and could be suspended from working for doing so. Instead, studio publicity departments had near complete control over how stars appeared in promotional materials. Right after she was cast, Anne Shirley began to appear in magazines promoting the film, acting as a living advertisement. This was how she was reintroduced to the world. Movie magazines presented Anne Shirley in advertisements for the film, but also for unrelated products, perhaps hoping that association with the wholesome Anne brand would benefit them. By this time in Hollywood, studio contracts included morality clauses, meaning stars couldn't act out in their personal lives in any way that would be at odds with their public persona. These morality clauses started to appear in contracts after a slew of scandals in the 1920s that revealed unsavory details about stars' private lives to the public, such as the William Desmond Taylor case. Because Anne Shirley was her legal name, her life and work became inextricable. It was almost like that up-and-coming actress Dawn O'Day ceased to exist from that day in 1934. Suddenly, Anne Shirley was a brand new star on the scene, with no scandalous past to think of because her persona was neatly packaged by the studio. Much like the character for which she was named, Anne Shirley the actress was made out to be the perfect model for young girls to look up to. Anne Shirley left Hollywood only a decade after Anne of Green Gables, but she kept that legal name for the rest of her life. She even got an Oscar nomination for her role in Stella Dallas, playing Barbara Stanwyck's daughter, but her name still tied her to that one role in Anne of Green Gables, the fictional main character's persona, and to the controlling studio contract she entered as a teenager. Anne Shirley had this to say about her association with the character when being interviewed in 1974, 40 years after starring in Anne of Green Gables. "The picture made me Anne Shirley. Even today, letters addressed to Anne Shirley Hollywood somehow get to me. How do I explain to those little girls watching me on TV that I'm somewhat older these days?"
I know I shall live here until I grow to be a real old lady with gray hair.
Sarah Thungal released 4 albums before splitting off: Frost and Fire, King of the Dead, One Foot in Hell, and Paradise Lost. But did you know there's actually a 5th album that was silently produced shortly after Paradise Lost, released in 1991? After they broke up due to record label issues in 92, they decided to record a new album alone. This album was never released by an official record label, nor was it ever intended to be. It was a personal project for the band members and was a vent piece to get out their frustrations with the record label. It was only in 2021 that Tim Baker, the band's frontman, came out and released this album to the public. It was released under the name Return of the Squandus and used a recolored version of the Orange album's cover with the album name at the bottom. This album featured 5 songs titled The Other Troll, Still Chaos, 20 Miles Per Hour, Queen of the Living, and the title track Return of the Squandus, being an excruciatingly long track of Baker screaming about roosters. This album was horrendously received critically, with Tarkin of the Metal Crypt giving it a score of 0, saying, "This is utterly repulsive in all ways. I wish listening to this upon nobody." Thank you for watching. I hope you learned something new.
Fade in. A row of trash cans surrounded by old junk. Spotlight on an open lid. A humble action figure peeks out of the mess. It's Spider-Man, but not like you've ever seen him before. Spider-Man Size Matters is a 2026 game for the PS5, in which you play as a discarded Spidey action figure who can't remember where he comes from. He initially seeks out Doctor Strange for help, but quickly realizes he can't communicate with humans. What he can do, though, is speak with the various statues around New York City. Each statue gifts him a vision of his past, helping him gradually restore his memories. Here, developer Insomnia Games revisits their platforming roots by placing Spidey in these 2.5D side-scrolling levels that cover his backstory, helping his owner through his parents' divorce in childhood, through his adolescent years when he took his stepsister to Coney Island, and finally, well, I'll talk about the last memory later. As a smaller Spider-Man, you're encouraged to rethink how you swing. Your size slingshots you further and faster, and you can hitch rides on passing NPCs, vehicles, and animals. Sometimes you fight paper cutouts come to life. There's even a great side quest where you meet an Ant-Man action figure who's convinced he's the real Ant-Man, trying to grow back to regular size. But to understand the larger context behind Size Matters, you need to understand the state of the games industry 30 years ago. See, in the early 2020s, game studios saw record sales across the board. Consumers were eating good, as the lingo of the day called it, but developers, individual artists, weren't. It was also a time of mass layoffs. Development costs were skyrocketing, and profits lined the pockets of big company CEOs, instead of the hardworking devs whose labor they benefited from. Despite their success with 2023's Spider-Man 2, Insomniac wasn't immune to this. A massive data breach also revealed just how much they poured into developing these titles. The writing was on the wall. AAA game development at that scale was not sustainable. Size Matters is emblematic of what writer Jonathan Lethem called the beauty of second use. Instead of creating art for a specific time period and binding it there through restrictive laws, we should be open to reusing it, adapting it to new contexts. Insomniac hired a small team of modders to essentially remix their older games, and they didn't even upscale the graphics at ground level to match Spidey's new size. Instead, they focused on the new movement, mechanics, and story. The new perspective also meant that players would notice the little things, all the literally small touches that otherwise go underappreciated. Lastly, its development cycle mirrored the days of old, when devs could reuse assets for multiple projects to save time and money, to experiment with new ideas using familiar resources in familiar worlds, to prioritize refinement over the ever-growing quest for more graphics. Games were expensive to make. Was it so wrong to dream of a more efficient pipeline? One that could not only mean more short and sweet games for players, but also a kinder workflow for artists? Let me tell you about that last memory. Near the end of the game, Spidey remembers that his owner had become a father recently, and he hadn't thought it fair to pass down his favorite toy. So he'd bought his daughter the all-new model, a fictional Spider-Man from the future called 2099. 2099 was more durable, more high-tech, and designed to be constantly upgraded. It was here that Spidey 2099 had declared us obsolete and challenged us to combat, before defeating us, resetting us to factory settings, and throwing us into the trash. Now, you do get to re-challenge 2099 and reconcile and find your happy ending and swing off into the sunset with your family. But if all of this sounds like a metaphor for the struggles of trying to keep up with an ever-growing industry in which expectations for tech had skyrocketed past what was sustainable and artist labor had become soul-crushingly undervalued, well, that's not an accident. Tragically, a little ironically, the game didn't sell as well as its mainline counterparts, and they stopped shelling out for its license. It is no longer available on digital storefronts. They never made physical copies. It's very hard to find footage, which is why all I have are 3D screenshots in a measly retro 1080p. But all's not lost. It's 2057, and Spider-Man is about to enter the public domain. I have a sense that the sunshine's coming out to dry up all the rain, and our itsy bitsy spider just might swing again.
What is up, gamers? It's your boy Jason Goldcouch here with your #1 source for reaction content. Now, today we got a video about what was it? Timmy, Tommy, Souls guy, something like that. We'll see in the video. So the haters have been at me recently. Also, I want to say. They've been in like, oh, Jason, react harder. Hey, this is a 15-hour-a-day job, and I can barely afford the mortgage on my third mansion. Now, if you want to support the content, then you can take a look at my Patreon or subscribe here on YouTube. Subscribe on Twitch, follow my OnlyFans, take a look at my girlfriend's Instagram page, take a look at my Tumblr, get me back on LinkedIn. Anyway, let's take a look at this reaction content today and see what we got in store.
Hey out there, conductors. This is Verified Misconduct here with another video. Yes, I do put these out every day, and I say this every day, but today's video is really something special. Today we're doing a deep dive on one of the platform's biggest question marks, the mysterious disappearance of Timmy Soulsfan. You probably heard about Timmy when everybody else did. But let's provide a little background for the uninitiated. Timmy's combination Let's Play review series on Two Worlds took the internet by storm for a week there right at the start of 2023. Less than a month later, an anonymous carrier pigeon provided credible allegations against Timmy Soulsfan. Content about this made the rounds, but Timmy had the nerve. Timmy had the audacity to keep making videos anyway. He addressed it in a video he later deleted, but he basically told the internet to stuff it.
Obviously, I've never smuggled lobsters or any other crustacean into a foreign country, especially not Canada. Gross.
His popularity waned after that, but he still maintained a small following of idiots who didn't realize that they should really move on to somebody else. Yes, we should judge them morally. That's only the surface level, though. Timmy Soulsfan started as a small YouTuber a few years before, making absolutely terrible Let's Plays of Dark Souls 1. We're talking the most dreadful content you can possibly imagine. Just, garbage. Like, we should judge Timmy and find him culpable for this. He should be punished. He should be fined. Everything changed in 2022 when suddenly Timmy's subscriber count jumped dramatically. Nobody really knew what was going on until I received an interesting message from an anonymous tipster on Discord. I went to Timmy's stream immediately. He tried to ignore me, but I pressed on.
Okay, let me read that sub. Big thank you to I Have Credible... yeah, dude, okay. Yeah, I don't even know what that was supposed to mean. Whatever. It's cool. I'm headbanging. I'm banging heads. Okay, look. If anyone else brings up the... Oh, fuck. Oh, fuck. No. I can still be useful. I swear. No.
Nobody really knows what happened or why he went offline, but he hasn't streamed since then. Now, some people have asked me after this happened, do you think there's any way that your use of information had an impact on Timmy's disappearance? Do we as YouTuber drama mongers bear a responsibility to consider the information we use and the potential consequences of our actions before we make decisions? Nah. If I'm not hitting at least 500,000 views per video, I don't get my advertisement contract anymore. Anyway, thank you all so much for watching. This took me 6 months of dedicated effort, just constantly slugging away at the computer to make this work. And if it wasn't for these people that you're about to see, I would have never been able to do it. Anyway, here they are.
Okay. Wow, that was a wild video. Am I right, guys? Holy cow. So, if you want to support the original creator, I've got a link to their channel. I already closed the window, didn't I? Oh well. What else is on?
Roger Dearly is maybe the worst game developer of all time. In 1996, his stupid game about dogs didn't even impress this young kid.
Well, what do you think?
The early build of Roger's game featured pre-rendered CGI backgrounds with 2D cell animation laid over the top. The resulting game was unresponsive with clearly floaty controls. Despite an apparent action-adventure focus, inability to control the strangely placed camera meant a rigid, locked viewpoint, like an early platformer such as Crash Bandicoot, which for context was released this same year. The difference is that Crash Bandicoot rocks, But Roger's baby game for babies can't even entertain a dog. And on top of all these problems, the game is incredibly short. Like, incredibly short. This appears to be the majority of the storyline. No wonder this kid hated it. But you know what the real issue is?
Even girls won't like this game. Sorry, mate.
Link's Awakening is so bursting with creative genius and character that it's crazy to believe it was a handheld game from 1993. It somehow crammed an overworld, great dungeons, and the most complicated story and cast up to its publication. There's even a fishing minigame. Koholint Island is such a wonderful place that it's just too good to be true. About halfway through the game, you'll find that the world is just the illusion of a slumbering windfish, and the only way to leave is to wake it up. If this happens, though, everything on the island will cease to exist. This includes Marin. She finds Link at the beginning of the game, but as you go along, you see them starting to form a relationship. So in order to complete the game, not only do I have to make Link leave Marin, but I'll cause Marin to not exist? Whoa, Nelly, this is a dilemma.
Okay, so let's talk about the ninja-themed shoujo jump phenom of the 2000s and 2010s. That's right, you know the one I'm talking about. Sakura. It's a feminist coming-of-age story. In a grim world. Where authority is frighteningly fallible. Or doesn't have your best interests at heart. Children are soldiers. And those without powerful families are expendable. But beauty can be power. So is punching the shit out of someone. Sakura by the authors of fanfiction.
For a while now, I've been thinking about the word perfect. What is perfect? What does it mean for something to be perfect? The term implies a kind of objective flawlessness, but I'm not even sure such a thing is possible. To explain what I mean, let's try something. Moonlight, Serial Experiments Lane, and To Pimp a Butterfly. In my opinion, all three of these things are 10 out of 10s, 5 stars, whatever, a literal perfect score. Does that make them perfect by extension? Moonlight is a 10 out of 10 because it resonates with me emotionally and gives a voice to a part of me I feel I can't talk to people about. Serial Experiments Lane is a 10 out of 10 because I find it incredibly intellectually stimulating, aesthetically intoxicating, and its commentary equally engaging and timeless. And To Pimp a Butterfly is a phenomenally crafted soundscape of rap, jazz, and soul, and lyrically details the black experience in a way that is both dense, yet easily compelling. Sure, sounds like perfection, except I don't see it like that. To me, a 10 out of 10 isn't necessarily a reflection of a work's quality, even if I do think a work of art is genuinely flawless. It is, perhaps more than anything, a reflection of my own personal experience with it. I wasn't describing why I think Moonlight or Lane are perfect, but why I love them as works of art, and there is an important distinction. If my experience with a piece of media is strong enough, if I can engage with it to the point of complete immersion, then I will give it a higher score than something that might objectively be better. Just as an example, I think Better Call Saul is an objectively better show than Gurren Lagann in a lot of ways. It's so good I genuinely cannot, off the top of my head, think of anything bad to say about it. And yet, only one of these shows is a 10 out of 10. I'll give you a hint. It's not the objectively better one. There are a bunch of examples like this I could go through, but to relate things back to my original point, I think perfection does not exist. Or rather, it doesn't exist in the way we traditionally think it does, as an objective goalpost that everything must be measured by. Even works of art that I might personally regard as perfect, I hesitate to call them that because what I deem to be perfect is not only different to what everyone else thinks is perfect, but also constantly changing depending on where I am in my life. What I think is perfect now, I might not later, and something I think is just good might be the best thing in the world were I to re-experience it tomorrow. So, in the end, I decided to just embrace that subjectivity, those constantly fluctuating standards. Because when you find something that really speaks to you, something that really carves itself a spot within your life, who cares if it doesn't reach some arbitrary benchmark of quality that, in all likelihood, doesn't even exist?
Good evening. Good evening.
In Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, there's a supercomputer named Deep Thought, tasked with computing the answer to the ultimate question of life, the universe, and everything. And it took 7.5 million years, but it finally did it. Tremendous computational resources were set to the task of answering this question that humans have been grappling with for millennia, and the answer, as determined by Deep Thought, was a succinct and definitive
42. It was a tough assignment.
So after those first 7.5 million years of letting the computer cook in the basement, the galaxy's best scientists reassembled and built a second, even larger supercomputer named Earth, which was given the job of figuring out what the question even was in the first place. It's been 7.5 million years. We know the answer now. It's 42. But we honestly kind of forgot how we phrased the ultimate question of life, the universe, and everything. And turns out that's a kind of important piece of the puzzle. 42 became an early internet nerd meme, mostly useful for pumping the brakes on whatever conversation you were having. Hey, can you help me out with this math problem? It's 42. No.
You get it?
I actually need help.
You get it?
Yeah, I get it.
Have you seen Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy?
Yeah, see? Look, my mom says that if I don't pass this next math test, I don't get a birthday cake this year.
Well, the cake is a lie.
I hate you so much. It's absurd. On purpose. But sometimes, something absurd is also actually pretty deep. In the American Standard Code for Information Exchange, ASCII, the number 42 corresponds to the asterisk. This cute little guy. And in a lot of command line interfaces which use text characters to construct powerful, adaptable syntax, the asterisk is used to represent a kind of wildcard, as in any number of anythings. An asterisk is the word lasagna. It's 77676678976. It's the entire collected works of Shakespeare. It's the last words of every person who's ever lived, character separated by snowman emojis. It's all of my hopes and dreams, my old report cards, every breed of dog, every last personal ad on Craigslist. It's all of that. And it's none of that. And it's more, contained within one tiny little symbol. You could say that, to the computer, Unicode Decimal Code 42, the asterisk, means whatever you want it to be, or everything it could possibly be, or all things at once. When we came to the supercomputer Deep Thought with all of our cosmic doom and human insecurity, and we posed to it our big existential question, whatever that question was, it thought for a while and came back to say in its own language, it's whatever you want it to be. Sometimes something absurd is actually kinda deep. And sometimes that thing is kind of an accident. When asked why 42, Douglas Adams explained that he was on his way to work one morning and decided that it should be something that made no sense whatsoever. A number, and a mundane one at that.
It was a joke. It had to be a number, an ordinary, smallish number, and I chose that one. Everyone's theories about binary representations, base 13, Tibetan monks are all complete nonsense. I sat at my desk, stared into the garden, and thought, 42 will do.
Despite that, fans speculate about the true meaning of the number even now. How can it be that such a remarkable coincidence could be just as beautiful, just as revelatory as anything the author could have actually intended to say? Sometimes the universe just works out like that. As often as we're tempted to task a computer with unveiling our quest for meaning, humans are pretty good at finding that meaning on our own. Or at least, we get a lot out of the search. It has been noted that in base 13, 6 multiplied by 9 will equal 42. Douglas Adams later said, "I don't make jokes in base 13.
After seeing Dune Part 2 being a monumental success in the scope and size and execution, and everybody raging about the Dune popcorn bucket, it got me thinking about Jodorowsky's Dune, a film that never got made, and the term unfilmable material, because that's what a lot of people thought of Frank Herbert's Dune for a very long time. If you Google a list of best films that never got made, Jodorowsky's Dune will often appear towards the top of said list, which is a little funny to me because about a decade later, David Lynch made Dune, and people didn't really like it.
It was a slow dying the death and a terrible, terrible experience.
Do you regret making it?
Yes.
That's not to say these would be the same film at all. They wouldn't be. But what's interesting to me is that people think that Jodorowsky's Dune would have been one of the most monumental and influential films for its time. And then I see some more of the material, some more of the bonkersness of Jodorowsky's vision for the project. And I can't help but think, no. I think we as an audience cling on to this mystery box idea of what could have been.
Hold on. You have a choice. You can have the boat or the mystery box.
What, are you crazy? We'll take the boat.
No, not so fast, Lois. A boat's a boat, but the mystery box could be anything.
It could even be a boat!
There are a lot of films that never got made, but an even more interesting list is films that never got released, a more popular trend because of Daddy Zazz down at Warner Bros. And what's interesting to me to link to Jodorowsky's Dune is Batgirl was shelved because it was very bad. Allegedly. And a lot of people were very upset with that, rightfully so. And then a film like Madam Webb comes out, which could be at the same quality as Batgirl, and everybody makes fun of it. It's the butt of every joke at the Oscars and award ceremonies, and it flops completely. And I'm not saying because of Madam Webb's non-success, Batgirl should never come out. But what I am saying is people went to bat for Batgirl, but Madam Webb got released. I just think we're a whole lot nicer to films that never came out or never got finished than ones that actually did make it to our eyes. And that's what I find so fascinating, because it takes a lot for a film to get made and released. And the way that people talk about this film that never got made makes it seem like it would have been the best sci-fi film of all time. And I guess, yeah, it could have been. And lastly, there was a sinking realization that I came to with Jodorowsky's Dune not being made, that one day Jodorowsky's vision, in quotes here, will eventually get released. There have already been, in my search for some information for this film, many upon many imaginings of Jodorowsky's vision through AI. And we're definitely not at a place where an AI could create a 3-hour film that would match Jodorowsky's original vision. But if it could, would people be happy about that? Because then the film would be released, right? This is, I guess, my point in kind of enjoying films that never got completed, is making something takes effort, takes a lot of time, it takes luck. And if we get to the point where a robot can just spit out what would be part of Jodorowsky's Dune, will that feel good? I don't think it will. A portion of my enjoyment is despite all the limiting factors that come with filmmaking, somehow people were able to will something to our eyes we've never seen. Spielberg and Coppola famously both had messy shoots in Jaws and Apocalypse Now, but they live on in part because amidst that chaos, incredible films still came out of it. There's numerous films that I've found a new love for listening to anybody who worked on the project and what they put into it. Filmmaking is personal.
I may have gone too far in a few places.
I think the idea we have in our heads of Jodorowsky's vision that never came out, even though we have some of these still images of concept art and everything, that idea is much better than the end product. And having a robot idealize that, I don't think will give people the satisfaction that they actually want.